Donald Trump claims that there's election fraud. The media absolutely freaks out and decides not to cover his speech, but Donald Trump has receipts. Enjoy the episode. Election fraud is a fun thing to talk about because both Democrats and Republicans have blamed each other for committing different frauds. This Democrat cheated, this Republican cheated, it's a tale as old as 1824. Moving though away from the 1800s and moving into our recent history, we have seen elections being contested. A lot of you remember the 2000 election where people thought that it was rigged against Al Gore. And then moving closer up to the 2016 election, a lot of people were saying that Donald Trump was working with the Russians to somehow steal the election. This was seen as absolute fact, and a bunch of journalists and news anchors talked about it.
The Russians hacked the election.
Putin hacked the American election.
Russia hacked the election.
How will we know what really happens when Trump and Putin get together? Can we trust either man? No, we can't. Trump opponents will speculate that he's really a Russian agent, having a meeting with his handler, betraying America. Trump simply cannot be trusted.
Also, presidents were allowed to talk about this.
The Russians were responsible for hacking the DNC, and that as a consequence, it is important for us to review all elements of that and make sure that we are preventing that kind of interference through cyber attacks in the future. That should be a bipartisan issue. That shouldn't be a partisan issue. And my hope is that the president-elect is going to similarly be concerned with making sure that we don't have potential foreign influence in our election process.
And the person that lost the election, Hillary Clinton, went on a whole tour and had a book talking about how the Russians stole the election from her. All of this was simple, basic, common knowledge, and everyone was talking about it. I mean, we even have Democrats from back in the day talking about how electronic machines could cause the election to sway in different directions. Take a look at this.
The biggest seller of voting machines is doing something that violates Cybersecurity 101, directing that you install remote access software, which would make a machine like that, a magnet for fraudsters and hackers.
These voting machines can be hacked quite easily.
You could easily hack into them. It makes it seem like all these states are doing different things, but in fact, 3 companies are controlling them.
There are a lot of states that are dealing with antiquated machines, right, which are vulnerable to being hacked.
Workers were able to easily hack into an electronic voting machine. It was possible to switch votes.
And then 2020 happened, and you weren't allowed to question elections anymore. Donald Trump said that there was voter fraud. Maybe that's because a lot of people were getting mail-in ballots, and we haven't really had a mass mail-in ballot system before. But every single time Donald Trump would say anything about the 2020 election, there would always be someone to come up right behind him and say, well, the 2020 election was the most safest and secure election of all time. This is why I actually wasn't surprised or shocked when just last week Donald Trump decided to go out and talk about different election frauds and vulnerabilities in our election, and CNN and ABC News and all the other guys decided not to play Donald Trump's speech. Now, I believe that it is the American people's right to see their president speak, no matter what he's talking about. Well, I don't like what he's saying, so we're gonna turn it off. I don't care. Show the president. And this wasn't Donald Trump talking about conspiracy theories. This was Donald Trump saying, hey, we did an investigation, and here are some problems that we might have with our election system. As the government found out that there were certain vulnerabilities in electronic voting and ballot counting systems. They also found out that China was stealing America's voting information, as 200 million voter records were compromised. Along with that, they also found out that there are non-citizens voting in our elections and non-citizens on our voter rolls. Here is what Donald Trump had to say about that.
Finally, to reveal just how vulnerable our elections continue to be, we are releasing the results of a stunning investigation by the Department of Homeland Security. According to the DHS review, state voter rolls and public records, They identified approximately 278,000 non-citizens who are registered to vote in federal elections. Since Democrat states refuse to share their voter files, the real number is actually much higher than that. Yet, even this limited analysis found more than 250,000 foreigners illegally registered to vote.
Now, I have heard constantly, over and over again, that non-citizens aren't voting in our elections. And it's also impossible for non-citizens to vote because, well, it's illegal. Then, however, right after this speech, the governor of New Jersey came out and claimed that 6,600 non-citizens were registered to vote in the state. Take a look at this video.
In June of 2023, nearly 3 years before I became governor, a serious software error in New Jersey's motor vehicle system led to the improper voter registration of what we believe to be roughly 6,600 people in our state. When New Jerseyans applied for a driver's license or identification at the MVC, they were asked if they wanted to register to vote. In the case of this error, some individuals indicated that they weren't citizens and weren't eligible to vote, but the software registered them anyway.
Now, according to the governor, it is reported that 400 of those people that were put on the registry actually voted. Now, this has the Democrats in an absolute tailspin because at first they were saying this doesn't happen, there's no way that non-citizens can vote, all that good stuff. And now they're saying, okay, well, some non-citizens are voting, but it's not like a crazy astronomical number. Yes, it is true that 400 people isn't a lot, but it is a person that doesn't belong in this country and they are taking away your vote and your voice. 400 is a lot when it's supposed to be 0. The question is, what's going to happen when we get more voter rolls and we start to realize that there are other states where non-citizens are voting, and we actually find out that this is more widespread than we actually thought? Will then Democrats start taking it seriously? When will they start taking it seriously? What if the number is 500? What if the number is 1,000? What if the number is 2,000? When are you going to start caring? When are you going to start saying, okay, this is way too much and we need to change our system? And this is why Donald Trump did this speech, because he is trying very hard to get the Senate to pass the Save America Act, which I believe we need now more than ever. Even though Democrats will tell you till they are blue in the face that it's a racist bill, it's not. It's going to stop women from voting. It's not. It's a poll tax. It's not. We don't need a Save America Act because it's illegal already for illegal citizens to vote. Well, they're voting. So what are we going to do about it? There has to be a solution to this problem so then if there is a close election, we can actually have confidence in that election. So I say pass the Save America Act no matter what. And with that, I just want to thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Dockery Docket. And until next time, like my mom always says, be good, be kind, be loving, goodbye.